what's really exciting is the idea that people who haven't felt free before to just work on what they love and what is beautiful and what is joyful and what is redemptive, that now they will give themselves permission to do that in a new way. That's the real exciting part. That's what I'm psyched about. Money's great, not the most important thing.
Welcome to Wealth Beyond Riches here on YouTube. I'm so glad you're here. Today's conversation is going to blow you away. We have an amazing opportunity to sit down with a founder of a unicorn, but it was a nonprofit, not a for-profit organization. And rather than seeking profit through this, it was all through the lens of purpose. This is none other than Jessica Jackley, the founder of Kiva International, which has processed to date over $3 billion in loans to entrepreneurs in third world countries so that they can have a better life. She is now teaching social entrepreneurship at the USC School of Business, and she has had board seats. She used to be on the Council of Foreign Relations. Her number of accolades would astound you. And she takes time with us to talk about what it looks like watching the LA wildfires transform her community. And we revisit what's going on right now and what's broken about the systems currently related to the LA wildfires. And that's not political. That's just saying there's some amazing generosity happening. At the same time, it's just taking really long for help to get to the right spot. So today, you're going to love this conversation. My name's Tim. If you're ready to think differently about your relationship with work and money, please subscribe so you don't miss a new video. And if you know somebody who's searching for a little more purpose in their career or with their wealth, please share this with them. Let's jump into the interview. This is going to be good. This is the podcast episode that almost never happened. First started with family memories, and I pushed back the schedule on you because I wanted to take my daughter to the Orange Bowl, which was amazing, by the way. I was dressed as a leprechaun, and she allowed me to. So that was great. But then we had family medical issues, multiple ones, and wildfires. But we're here.
We're here. I know. Meant to happen.
Yeah. Before we jump in, you're in LA. You guys were displaced for a bit because of the wildfires. Like, how are you guys doing? How was all of that for people listening who are like, yeah, I read about it on the news, but I'm not there.
Sure. It was very strange. And, I've thought and reflected a lot about the night that things started. We were having Taco Tuesday, like you do, sitting at our dining room table or our kitchen table, and we saw out the window a little flicker off in the distance. We live on the east side, so we're talking the Eaton Canyon, Altadena fires. And we thought, oh man, did someone set off a firework again and catch a tree on fire, which happens not infrequently in our neighborhood.
Okay.
And we were just kind of annoyed. And then we kept eating and we looked back out, and it wasn't just a tree, it was a bunch of trees. And then the kids started to get a little nervous. And so we sort of finished quickly, shuffled them upstairs, did bedtime, and came back down and looked, and it was like this rip up the mountainside. So it was the forest on fire, and we just watched it kind of over the evening burn across. And by midnight, actually, our house had filled with smoke, and I had to put masks on the kids, and we evacuated 4 hours later as soon as we could get them up.
Wow.
It was scary for us, and it was absolutely nothing compared to what a lot of friends in our community experienced. In my daughter's little preschool, half a dozen families out of, I think there's 24 total in her class. There's 17 kids. I mean, a half dozen lost homes. 2 out of 4 or 5 teachers, full-time teachers, lost homes. We've had friends move away. There's, in all of my kids' classes, people have lost it, and it lost their homes, lost everything. And a lot more of the displaced. It's been interesting to see the sort of secondary and tertiary effects of it. We didn't lose our home, but our landlord realized it would be a great time to sell. And so even though we've rented for 10 years, we have to move out in 3 weeks. I mean, just wild ripple effects and displacement even after, weeks and months after. Suddenly, people's lives are shifting. Yeah, the real estate market's its own conversation. There are friends that are resettled now in other pockets around Southern California, but they're driving an hour and a half to school every day with their kids. And that's not sustainable. There's still a big question mark around what will happen next for a lot of families that we love. Yeah, but we are super, I pinch myself and I feel like it's the story of my life. We're fortunate. We're safe. Everyone's all right. And it's just very sobering, right? To ever have to flee anything. My husband is a refugee, and he has talked about this experience with the kids. We've hosted refugee families in our home in the past. We've talked a lot about sometimes people have to leave their homes even if they don't want to, and this is why. And this was like a very mini version of that, but we all learned a lot and had a lot of really good conversations about it. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things that's hard to experience unless you have proximity to it.
Yeah.
And so I know that's probably been a big part of your last couple months, and wanted to check in.
Absolutely has. I mean, right. It's hard not to go. It comes up every day, all the time, every day with someone.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, my sixth grader, he got a new student in his class last week, and they have 12 or 13 kids in the class. It's really small, but it's like a big disruption. So I can't imagine 2 to 3 kids are not like, if you've have 5 or 6 kids displaced in your preschool class, that's a big change.
You know, and I will say, because of the topic of this conversation, and there's really an interesting set of differences. I'm going to choose every word very carefully. There are absolutely a variety of socioeconomic statuses and experiences for Altadena fire victims as well as Palisades victims. I mean, you have the gamut in each community. And Altadena is unique in that it was one of the only pockets that sold homes and allowed land ownership during the civil rights movement to Black families, just to be very direct. And so there's some families that we know that have been displaced that had their home was their shot at having generational wealth passed down. We had friends that had, lived with 4 kids, and the mom and dad and the grandmother had passed the home down to the family, and that is gone now. And there's this sort of like family to family devastation, which is different everywhere. There's all these forks, right? Did they have insurance? Did they not? What did insurance cover? What didn't it? Blah, 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 blah. But if you break off at that first branch, no, they didn't have insurance, right? What happens to that family? There's levels and layers of disruption and devastation. And then when you look at sort of how do you measure community impact, the survivor families still have a really interesting road ahead of them, where maybe they're one of 3 houses out of a dozen on their street, and their community's gone, and the school is gone, and the church is gone, and a lot of local businesses are gone. We can move on, but it's been very interesting to see the differences in sort of the complete devastation. Almost everything's wiped out in the Palisades, and it's not quite that case in Altadena, but the impact, everyone has their own unique story about it, but I'm closer to the east side, so I'm feeling that a lot more and watching that a lot more. Anyway, we can keep talking. We can keep talking about all the other things there are to talk about, and there's endless things.
I know, but that one's personal and it's important. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that. That's huge.
Of course.
Hugely helpful. Before we move on, though, sorry. Where do you see, one of the things that I'm so excited to talk to you about is the role of generosity in people's lives. And you've spent your career being a catalyst for other people's generosity, which is something you and I have a ton in common. And I love that. In the midst of, or I guess in the aftermath of the wildfires, where do you see pockets of generosity springing up? What are you encouraged by? What do you get excited about? Or where are there big needs that maybe people don't know about?
Right. I wouldn't say never, but I'll just say very rarely the person that kind of jujitsu is a positive question. Like, where is their hope into actually there's so much wrong and there's so much broken, but it's been motivating to me to build new things. I mean, there's so many people that wanted to help that either didn't know how or were, instantly centers where you could drop off. I mean, schools, different staging areas for in-kind donations instantly were filled up. People were turned away right and left. So there's this, of course, a huge desire to give. So that is a positive thing. The systems that we have in place are so broken and messed up that it was very difficult for people to get beyond, if my local school can't take the stuff that I have, what do I do next? A lot of folks went to GoFundMe. It becomes quite synonymous with, are you helping your neighbors and friends? Where's their GoFundMe page? And I think that's great. Again, in the spirit of candor, I have friends in the Palisades whose GoFundMe pages were at $100,000, and they reached and exceeded their goals. And then I have friends in Altadena who were trying to raise $15,000 to $20,000 and aren't there. And so there are communities helping their communities. I mean, different pockets, different streets. I have a lovely dear friend who lives on a quiet, the real estate's incredibly expensive on this street. And there's a lot of wealth there, a lot of privilege, and they were all helping each other a lot. And I think that was incredible. It's incredible to hear about. You have everything from pockets of this city with folks that can hire private firefighting teams. That's a thing. To just hang back, and even if the public infrastructure fails, they're going to be there with their own water sources, their own water tankers, their own systems to make sure that that pocket is safe. And so anyway, in terms of, I see so much generosity, and we absolutely need better systems. This, unfortunately, is going to become more and more the new normal. And so certainly in times of rapid response needs, there have to be more options for people to help outside of their own pockets, outside of their own bubbles. I believe, again, there is genuine, I'm not talking to anyone, privileged, not whatever, that doesn't truly want to help friends and neighbors, but it's tricky to know who and how and where. So I have a lot of ideas, but it's going to take a little while to figure out what the better solutions are for those needs and ongoing needs.
Yeah. Any ideas you want to share that are just coming to
mind?
I mean,
look, I'm absolutely obsessed with the volunteer economy, this marketplace that, for about 5.5 years now, I've been trying to become the expert on it, trying to figure out, it's this strange aspirational thing where 95-ish% of people say they want to volunteer. And what I'm saying, by the way, there's different sources I can cite officially if you need me to, but there are different studies, different papers I've read, and I've gathered a lot of data over the past few years to fuel, to try to become smarter and gain my own insights on it and practice my own sort of deeper thinking on the problem and the possible solutions that we could build. But also, I took a swing at doing something different in volunteering 3.5 years ago, building Altruists, which was an attempt to provide do-it-yourself sort of volunteer projects, service projects in a box for families. So instead of a Kiwi crate or a STEM kit or a craft kit, you could receive a little box that would have information about an issue. We did 12, one a month for a whole year. We did unhoused populations and homelessness. We did food insecurity. We did clean water. We did save the pollinators. We did help a shelter pet, all sorts of stuff. And you could actually learn about the issue and then do something about it. That was based on a number of insights and a number of pieces I was trying to put together where, back to what I was saying, it's very aspirational. Everyone says they want to volunteer more, but they say, I can't find opportunities. Okay. Yeah. And even when I do find them, I can't schedule them. Fair. And even when I can find and schedule them, I can't bring my kids. And interestingly, the segment that volunteers the most are parents. In that set, of course, single moms volunteer more than anyone else. Let's just sit with that for a minute. And yes, there's a lot of sports and schools and hospitals and sort of the things that you might expect. That's majority of volunteer hours. There's also a ton of informal volunteering that no one's really managing, or I don't want to say no one, but I don't think is being managed very well or being appreciated or catalyzed very well. But so you look at this and you say, wait, I don't get it. Everyone wants to do this. There's this very weird exchange of value where all that a volunteer really wants is a sense of purpose and meaning. It's like a story back to them. So they're opting into giving away. By the way, it's $300 billion. It's this giant, giant market of time and expertise and talents that people give away every year. And what do they want for payment, so to speak? What do they want in return? They want to feel like they matter. They want to feel like they're connected to something bigger than themselves. And so what I haven't seen are a ton of organizations, very few, that are designing for, this can sound weird, designing for the volunteer. Now, within the set of things that are useful to the nonprofit. But who's really thinking about how to design the most catalytic, beautiful, incredible experiences that are kind of the gateway drug to deeper commitment, deeper involvement. So that's what I was trying to do. And I think I'll try to do that again in the next year or two. What I'd really love to do is kind of overhaul the whole operating system for the whole volunteer sector. And in all seriousness, I'm kind of working on this. I have a nonprofit partner that I think we're going to actually make it happen. But it takes time. It takes time to raise the funding for that. But I know that especially with the technology that we have, there's got to be better ways to match people with opportunities that really speak to their hearts and utilize their skills if that's what they want. There's got to be a way to populate platforms with things that make sense based on best practices, which are hard to find, but I know they're there. The data's there. There's some organizations that do this really well. And so you could imagine populating a platform with really wonderful templatized kind of plug and play experiences that have really worked well in other scenarios or with other organizations, and you just match them to similar organizations and say, hey, approve this posting, click this button, it'll be live. We'll give you the playbook for what to do and how to manage it. So I have so many ideas. I know I'm giving a long answer. It's already like halfway through our time. I'm super, super excited about this. And I think I would go so far as to say it's of such value. It's of such value, not just to the volunteers, but to organizations that receive, I mean, it can be of such value. Sometimes I think we have these pretty lame opportunities that are posted and they're donor grooming in disguise, and people instantly get tracked into this path of being asked for money when actually that's not what they came for. That's not what they're asking for. That's not what they wanted to do. I mean, yes, people are twice as likely to donate after they volunteer, so it makes sense. But I think there are better ways to do it, and I'm very excited. I actually also think people would pay both sides should be actually, I think, would pay. I'm not talking, I think you could build a giant business around this. And I'm trying to figure out what the best structure is. I've also been very interested in structure choice as destiny. As you know, we haven't talked about it yet, but as you know, I started a nonprofit that became this unicorn by all measures. And, when you do that, it's a very interesting experience to know that you can build something of scale and then to sort of walk away and mic drop and have to get a job to pay off your student loans. It's very interesting. So I have a lot of thoughts on structure choice and what might be good for me, what might be good for the success of a venture, depending on what you want to build and where you want to go. I actually wonder if there are ideal structures at different phases. What would it look like if most organizations started out as nonprofits, if they wanted to take a lot of risk and innovate and experiment a lot? Maybe that makes sense to have this subsidized capital to play with. What does it look like if over time you could more easily transition into a for-profit structure if you wanted to go that path? What would it look like to even hybridize 501c3s and create for-profits that would take advantage of really great assets that have been built up but are kind of trapped in the 501c3 structure, and to capitalize them and scale them up and still allow the nonprofit to have majority ownership in the thing, but creating new investment assets? There's so much I'm into, but that's my very long answer. I'll summarize. I'm super into this idea of volunteering, figuring out how to make it more valuable for everybody, figuring out how to make the whole process and, again, the system more sustainable. I'm also really interested in structure and being a little more nimble around that. I've been on 4 different boards, where nonprofits have become for-profits. It's kind of crazy. So it's a thing. It's a thing that can happen. And it's not always right, but I think there's a lot of taboo and fear around it, and I don't think there should be. Okay, I'll stop there. There's a lot of information.
That is awesome. So, Jessica, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, oh, I actually have a lot of interest / expertise in that specific area. Are you looking for people
friends
right now? Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, I'm having conversations with a number of players, a number of what I see to be really important leading platforms in the space. Absolutely. I'd love to talk to anyone and everyone that has opinions, has experiences that I don't have. It'd be great. For real. Please reach out. This is Tim for my email.
There we go. What do you think about the volunteer economy? And I'm curious about the baby boomer generation, that's getting ready to retire, transfer however many $1 trillion to the next generation. A lot of folks are looking for that passion and purpose in quote unquote retirement. It could be the next career or something like that. But do you see a big opportunity there with the volunteer economy?
I do. There are few, if you look around, it's very bifurcated. There are a few platforms that really truly marry the power of an exchange of money as a resource as well as an exchange of time or expertise. They're very separate, and I don't think they need to be. I would bet money that this has been said on your podcast before, but some of the best advice I've gotten over time in terms of fundraising and developing relationships with investors or donors is, you ask for advice, you'll get money. You ask for money, you get advice, and you're full of advice. So I would say the more we can include people that have the desire to be involved in the work itself, the thing itself, not just writing a check and sitting back in the, in the stands and waving from a distance. I think it's fantastic to have both the money and the advice, to both the expertise and wisdom and all of that people bring at that stage in their lives, as well as the investment or the donation, whatever it looks like. I think that's extremely valuable. In fact, I think I just wrote a kid's book about giving, and one of the key tenets in there that I tried to surface is I think the best thing we all have to give the best thing we have to give is ourselves. And it sounds very cheesy, but I really believe it in my bones. I don't want my kids to think, hey guys, here's the plan. Go make as much money as you can doing whatever, kind of zone out for a few decades, but then activate yourself. Decide that you're going to seek these things that you hadn't for the first half of your life or whatever.
Yeah.
Because the best thing you can do is give a bunch of money to a cause. And maybe you can get involved too at that point. I mean, look, I understand that sometimes that's a path that people end up taking, but I would actually push back and say there's been more purpose, more meaning, more unspoken expression of values, and not, I mean, very good things, right? Not just the bad or the ugly, asleep at the wheel kind of career paths. I think people are always expressing through their actions what they really believe. There's a lot of beautiful stuff that people have built. And I think you and I do share this too. I really enjoy helping people unpack that. I really enjoy saying, oh my gosh, you might have just thought that you're just doing, and for those listening, not seeing me, I'm doing a lot of air quotes. It's a favorite thing of mine. You might think you're just doing, fill in the blank job, but you're prioritizing values and principles, and there is purpose and meaning in what you're doing all the time, or else you wouldn't be there. There's always a story that people are tied to. I think sometimes we just forget to say it out loud. All this to say, yes, wholeheartedly, enthusiastically, yes, there's a huge opportunity. But you can tell as I'm speaking, yeah, it's great. There's money. It's going to be great. Trillions of dollars. Cool. That's good. You need that sometimes. But actually, what's really exciting is the idea that people who haven't felt free before to just work on what they love and what is beautiful and what is joyful and what is redemptive, that now they will give themselves permission to do that in a new way. That's the real exciting part. That's what I'm psyched about. Money's great, not the most important thing.
Yeah, that's incredible. What you just said, joyful, redemptive, having permission to work on something like that in whatever the next season of life is. How do you think somebody gets in touch with those things? They're on the default career path or maybe they're coming to an end of a season. How do they figure out what those things are to get ready for whatever's next?
I want to disclaim whatever I'm saying before and after. I speak from a position of privilege. Many people are survival entrepreneurs. Many people are survival, workers of all sorts of roles and jobs. So to be able to have a choice, first and foremost, let's just say, wow.
Yeah.
What a gift. What a gift. Not everyone gets to pick. But if you're listening and you get to pick, and I would push yourself if you're not sure. If you're not sure if you get to pick, you get to pick. You do. Yeah. You'll know if you don't have another choice. So if you get to think about and make a choice around what you want to spend your beautiful working hours on, first of all, just take that in, sit with that. Yeah. Wow, you get to choose. And then we live in such a busy world, a noisy world, a fast-moving world. It's tricky to even build this into my own life and my kids' lives and stuff, but I think time in reflection, time in prayer, time in meditation, time writing. I don't know what I think unless it's written down. Truly. Or unless I'm speaking to someone. I have such an extrovert's brain. If it stays inside and quiet, I don't know. Everyone has their own process, but for me, forcing myself to have quiet, just me, just a pen and paper, and to write and to ask myself, kind of give myself homework, ask myself the questions that I want answers to, really articulate them, be my own coach. What would it look like to feel fulfilled? What would it look like if I had to define what joyful work might be? Anything. You can name anything. There's no wrong answer. You can start with, I want to be in a well-lit space. I want to be with people that are really nice to me. I want to, I don't know.
I want to have plants in the room that I'm in.
No, totally. Whatever comes up for you. There's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be your own coach, your own guide, your own leader. You have to lead yourself toward the answers to those questions. And I don't know how else to do it besides kind of two main things. One, writing, journaling, which is really a conversation with myself. Or two, a conversation with a trusted, loved, safe person that knows you well enough to kind of shine a light on or hold a mirror up to what you're saying and say, yeah, that seems like it fits, or no, it doesn't. I actually did an exercise with my students. I teach at USC, and I have these amazing students, and I forget the name of the exercise, but we basically had them pair off, tell each other their life stories in 5 minutes. And then the other person not only had to get up and present as if they were their partner, which is crazy empathy building. It's amazing. But then they had to do a second piece of this, which was like list all the things that you think are really special gifts and assets and talents and experiences that stand out to you about this other person, because we forget what's special about our own stories sometimes. So I think that could be a really powerful thing, specifically to do something like that with a friend. And that'll help unearth the pieces that are meaningful to you and that are special. And you maybe kind of forget that could be really great foundational sort of posts for what's next for you.
Jessica, that's so helpful. Man, there's a lot of great stuff there. I defaulted, kind of stumbled in by accident to an exercise really close to what you're saying, which is I was driving to the office and I had an idea in my mind and I didn't want to forget it. And I don't have a great system for this. So I decided to text myself. So I used like the Siri button on the steering wheel and was like, hey, send a text to Tim Meisenheimer. And it was like, what do you want to say to Tim Meisenheimer? He's South African, my Siri. And I'm not going to try the accent because I'll botch it. But when he said, what do you want to say to Tim Meisenheimer? All of a sudden, thinking of a Will Ferrell movie, I floated above my body and looked down on my body. But it all of a sudden put me into the third person going, hey, what would you say to Tim? Almost as if like you said, like I'm my own coach going, hey, Tim, don't forget to pick up flowers for Jen or something like that. It was an idea.
Right.
And so I turned it into, in Chat GPT, you can like do tasks now and have like notifications. And so you can say, hey, at 3:30 every day, talk to Tim about his day. How did he do? What did he accomplish? What should he focus on for tomorrow? And what's interesting for me, this is probably not everybody, but I all of a sudden switched from, I have a negative inner thought life for the most part about myself. And all of a sudden I switched to this really empathetic, really positive coach for myself. And so anyways, if that's helpful for anybody, if moving into the third person, talking to yourself was, I don't know, it was a weird thing that I was like, wow, this is so much more helpful than me just thinking.
Yes, it's more than you might think it would be.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, background on you and me. 2009, I saw you get interviewed at a leadership summit. So I saw you get interviewed and I was like, man, that was so cool. And I don't know if you got my text like an hour ago. I was looking in my email archives, and after that interview, I run a wealth management firm called Streamline. We had a couple hundred clients back in 2009, and we'd send out a monthly email blast that was so long. Oh man, email blasts used to be so long. Thank you, James Clear, for shortening them. And I'll put this up on the screen like when we edit it and stuff like that. But we basically started like our own, you could create Kiva communities, I think.
Oh my gosh, the lending team. Yeah, the lending team.
Yeah. And so we created a Kiva community for Streamline. We shared it with clients and said, hey, $25, you can give it to a specific entrepreneur across the globe. You can lend to a baker in Afghanistan, a goat herder in Uganda, a farmer in Peru. And then we linked to a 2-minute interview with you. So
I'm like really dying to open up the text, but I'm not going to do it. Okay. I got to do it. I'm not going to do it, but I will after. I didn't see it because I was in back-to-backs this morning, but I'm so excited that you did that up. Thank you. Small world.
Yeah, it was so cool. And to be able to spend time with you and your brother last year and to kind of reflect on that. But that was cool because here's the thing, Jessica, I think Kiva for me was, as you learn how to become a more generous person, there are these little like seeds sown along the way. And that was one of those seeds for me that got planted of there's different ways to give, and giving can also be something you do in community with other people. And I can remember the clients who were like, hey, we actually had a client write us a check for $25, stick it in the mail and say, give it to the children. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. This is an online platform.
There's some children somewhere. That's so nice. So sweet.
It was a marker for me of what giving could look like. And the work that you did at Kiva helped paint a picture for that. And also how you led. That was just a marked moment for me. So I just really appreciate that. And wanted to say,
I wish I could jump through and give you a big hug. Thank you. That makes my day.
Amazing. So let's go way back in time, maybe to the Kiva days. As you think about starting Kiva, or maybe even just launching into the career world, pretend like you're speaking to my oldest, she's a 16-year-old, she's a junior in high school, thinking about college. A lot of people would say sort of the default setting is get a career where you earn lots of money so then you can give it away later. You chose to jump into a career that linked generosity to it. Where'd you first get that bug? Or who modeled that for you?
Yeah,
Just like
sure.
you've done it for other people now.
I think in the spirit of asking oneself questions and trying to answer honestly and to see yourself with empathy and all that good stuff, I was wonderfully, beautifully free, I think is the word that is really on my heart. I felt free. And I felt free because of my faith. I felt free because of my ridiculously loving, stable family of origin, like my parents, and you met my brother. It's what, of all the kinds of privilege to have, and I have a lot of them, to have the privilege of that kind of family life growing up.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. And I actually mean this. My husband and I talk about it all the time. It's a little bit funny even. I just have always assumed if I want to go try to do something, I'll be able to figure it out. And so I operated quite fearlessly and in a way that I now understand might be seen as risk tolerant. But at the time, I was just doing the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I had such clarity about my priorities. And my big confession of the podcast is money was not one of them. It just wasn't. In fact, I've really tried over the last few years, working with a coach and everything, to understand my own relationship to money. And I don't know that I'm the best spokesperson for any of it, but I was uninterested in pursuing money. In fact, I was fearful of it because, I grew up in a lovely church environment, Christian evangelical church environment, that told me things that, look, I'll just take all of the ownership. I'll own it all. I interpreted a lot of things probably incorrectly, but, you hear stuff like where God guides, God provides. Cool. So I just need to go jump onto the next adventure that I want to do and it'll work out. Everything will work out. It'll be fun. I genuinely, this was not financial advice, but I kind of decided it was. And so I would just jump into I'd pursue, and then, seek first and all else follows, right? I'm truncating, but still. Yeah. I thought you choose the purity of the thing that is calling to you. You listen to that voice, you choose your calling, and you run after that thing. And the other stuff is details, and it will work itself out. I never thought about, and again, privilege all over the place. I never thought about, is this the place where I'll earn the most money? No, the thing that I was doing when the idea for Kiva happened was an unpaid internship. And that was not a terrible thing to do or to take or whatever. So yeah, I quit a job and moved to East Africa to learn more about micro enterprise and microfinance because I wanted to do it. And I thought worst case, it'll be a grand adventure and I'll have some great stories and I'll learn more about what it means to be a human being on this planet. And then I'll figure out what I do next. It just so happened that while I was there, I had a lot of interesting insights and experiences and conversations that led to some what if questions that became Kiva. So I was an accidental entrepreneur. I don't know if it's disappointing to hear. It'd be great if I could say it was also intentional, but I was doing the thing that I wanted to do. I have to tell you a really funny insight too that came from a conversation with this coach about a year ago.
I was going to ask, so this is great.
So he gave me a little worksheet that was kind of Mad Libsy, fill in the blank, complete the sentence. And it was all about money and wealth and everything. And it was people who pursue wealth are blank. And I would say, missing the point or whatever. I would say all these negative things. If I were really wealthy, and then I would say things like, must have compromised everything that's dear to me. I had these ideas that you were either like Scrooge McDuck kind of, or all the bad guys and all the more rich and bad. I just thought that's what it was. I thought if you have a pile of money that you're sitting on or that you've made, you probably did something sketchy to get it. And I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to be a giver, not a taker. And business is really suspicious. What is business? What is entrepreneurs are like the gang leaders of business because they started the businesses. So I am absolutely uninterested in all that stuff. And it really took it took the experience of kind of accidentally becoming an entrepreneur and having this one specific project that I wanted to do blow up in a great way for me to realize, you can do entrepreneurship and make it be a good thing. And you don't have to play by the same rules that, I at least thought one had to play by.
Yeah.
One of the questions on that little Mad Libsy thing, by the way, was about my very first memories of money. And and memories of what just people getting paid, like the idea that people had jobs and you got paid for that work. And I remember I had this sick feeling because I remember learning when I was a little kid that my mom, who's a school teacher, was spending an extra hour or something, or hour or two after school and not home with us because she was tutoring other students to make a little bit of extra money. And the idea that the most precious thing in the entire world, my mother's time, had a price tag on it, I literally felt nauseated. I felt, I don't even understand what, there's no price that is enough. Why is the world this way? And so I've honestly felt a lot of power in disassociating my time with the dollar value. And so I'm not saying this is good. I'm telling you where my issues are. And so I've had to really think carefully about, especially as an actual adult with a mortgage and 4 children and all the things that come with that, even though I have felt a little bit of a deviant, rebellious, I'm still free because I'm not thinking too hard about how my time equals X amount of money, because how could you value a person's time? How could you do that? It's just gross to me. It's gross. But to then think about the outcomes, the value of work, I understand now. And I have a different set of ideas around it. But those are some of the things that have emerged for me that I would have never been able to name until the last few years. So again, the good, bad, and weird. That's a little bit of another confession here. But I definitely pursued everything in my career I've only ever pursued for joy, for beauty, and I figured it out. I figured out how to do it and pay my mortgage and my rent or whatever else I've needed to pay over time. But I've certainly done it in a way that has avoided coming into too close contact or something with the money. Yeah. Kind of weird, huh?
Yeah. No, it is going to sound weird to probably a lot of people. I completely see, I see the perspective, and there is so much value in, especially whether you're in business or you're teaching, being able to see some of the broken things of this world and to make new things out of them. I think that's one of the things that you are very gifted at. And you've said it already that like you see these things even with the California wildfires going, some of these things are broken, but that doesn't mean we should despair or be without hope, because that's opportunity to make something new. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I watch look, I'm a little obsessed, as is obvious, with the idea of entrepreneurship. It's what I teach. It's what I feel like I preach it sometimes too. And it's really just an attitude of problem solving, of building with intention, of listening to people and really figuring out what they need. And I think social entrepreneurship, I hope that it's not as set aside as it is currently today. I hope it's just seen in the future as a smart way to think about risk and opportunity and who we can serve with the widest possible lens, thinking of more stakeholders versus just shareholders versus just customers, paying customers. But social entrepreneurship, I think, again, it frees one to simply, there's nothing simple about it, actually, not simply, but to think more broadly about what needs fixed, who can fix it, who can we serve, forget if they can pay or not, or pay enough or not. We'll figure that part out. But what needs done? What's the world we want to build? And I feel like, why would anyone want to spend their time doing anything else? If you can do that, and you can, why would you settle for just making a little widget over here, or doing something that isn't as inclusive and as considerate of more and more individuals in the planet?
Because what you're talking about, Jessica, is you're building a skill set in social entrepreneurship that even if that venture or that organization fails or blows up or something, or doesn't work out, you don't figure out how to monetize it, you can now turn that into something else and keep that going.
Yeah, I have a friend who said something the other day. She was speaking in one of my classes, and she said, sometimes I just think, why can't business just be like an art project? Just this demonstration of what the world could be. I loved it so much. I loved it so much. Why can't we just build stuff that's good and beautiful and also can sustain? That's more than enough. And that's way more fun than a lot of traditional views of entrepreneurship. I'm not even sure I answered your question. Did I even answer your original question? Where even are we in questions?
Original question, this doesn't matter. What matters is
Okay.
you're sharing some amazing things that are going to be beneficial for anybody who's listening, whether they're business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders. This is incredible stuff because this kind of totally flips on the head. It's really like why are you in business? Why are you operating? Why are you serving the customers you're serving?
Yeah.
And is there passion and purpose behind that? Or is it just a high-paying job that will provide for your family and will provide for them in the future? But if you're helping a greater good, if you are fixing some of the broken things of this world, there's going to be a ton more fulfillment at the end of the day. Like you were talking with the volunteer economy. When you get that sense of fulfillment from what you do, kind of doesn't matter what you're doing because you're living a life of service, which is huge.
Yeah. Amen.
Hey, have you shared, we were talking before about one of the things you're excited about researching right now is some of the overlooked wisdom in the world that businesses are really missing out on and could be taking advantage of.
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah.
So imagine me right out of college, start this nonprofit, kind of stumble into entrepreneurship accidentally because I wanted to do this one specific thing, and then it grew and it grew, and here we are. I
pulled off, sorry to interrupt. I pulled off
it's great.
Kiva did $2 billion in loans since 2005.
It's almost at 3.
It's almost at 3.
I know.
Goodness.
It's amazing.
That's pretty impactful. That's because it's really the first of its kind that you created, right?
Yeah. We were doing this thing that we now call crowdfunding before anyone was calling it crowdfunding. We'd explain it in a very long, funny way. We're like, hey, check this out. So even if you don't have a lot of money yourself, what if a lot of people put in a little bit of money? That would be really cool. So that was new. But the other thing that was new was this strange, not an interest-bearing investment, not a security, not a tax-deductible donation, but this weird loan where lenders wouldn't make any money. There's 0% loan from the lender's perspective. And yes, utilizing the expertise and presence of microfinance institutions on the ground to lend that funding out to entrepreneurs that could use it. And we're talking micro loans, micro enterprises, a few $100s usually. And over time, they would repay. Wouldn't that be really fun to be a lender, not a donor, not an investor? And nobody knew what to do with us. So there was a really interesting lesson so we acted before we asked for permission, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Asked for forgiveness. The SEC didn't quite know what to do with us. A lot of legislators and even international stuff, like we just started to allow people to lend a little bit of money to other people all around the globe and then get that money back. So that's what Kiva started to do in 2005. And we're almost at 20 years and almost at $3 billion. It's amazing. Wow. But that experience, I mean, it's a legit thing. That is a scaled up thing. And the number of times, the average, I feel like, response over time that I have gotten as, maybe not today as the youngest of women, but as a young woman who had started this thing was, oh, look, that's so cute. Look at you. What a good thing. And I'm like, yeah, but it's also a really powerful, big thing. It's not just a cute nonprofit. Like we were really smart about certain things. We messed up a bunch too, but here are the things that worked and here are the things that were powerful about it. And it's a lot of people overlooked the real wisdom of that and of lots of other organizations that I find to be some of the most beautiful ventures, beautiful bodies of teams of people that have come together to pursue an incredible mission and are doing so in ways that would run circles around a business kind of trying to do the same thing. Like one small example, you look at any sort of voluntary program, maybe it's a corporate social responsibility thing, maybe like it's a voluntary, everyone in our company should be healthier, like to work or wear a step counter and let us know how you did. When companies get 10, 15, 20% participation, they're like, oh, we are amazing, right? And then you look at other organizations of other structure, whether it's a union, perhaps, right? Where you'll get 90% voluntary participation. So what do they know that business doesn't necessarily know or isn't paying attention to in terms of rallying folks and getting them involved? You look at corporate giving programs where, again, let's say it's maybe a few dozen % participation, but often not. nonprofits, the average, right? The average is that over 50% of nonprofit professionals give back to the organization that pays them at the end of the year. So they're actively donating to the organization that pays them.
Yeah.
Who here has ever made a salary or been paid by a business and then gives a little bit back? Because they really
Yeah,
just
right.
believe in it.
Hey,
Nobody
boss,
does that.
I just was I feel really great about what we're doing here.
Teamwork.
And so
Yeah, honey
here's my
badger.
December paycheck.
Yeah. So there are things that not just 501c3s and charities, but there's a lot of different kinds of 501c organizations and others that do unbelievable things and aren't just good, but are better than business at it. And I think it's to be the average traditional business, person's detriment to overlook those. And so I'm studying and doing research on that, and hopefully going to write a lot more about it in coming years.
Awesome. Oh, that's exciting. We have so mumuch stuff to follow up on later. We've got a kids book coming out on giving. What's the website again where people can go to for that?
Kidsco, akidsco.com. They have a lot of incredible books there, and mine will be there soon too. A kids book about giving.
Sweet. Oh, that's awesome. Is that the one that's like kids book about gratitude, kids book about empathy? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's great. We've got like 5 of those.
Oh,
Can't wait to see it.
fantastic. Yeah.
All right. First question is, on Thursday, I'm going to speak to a group of high school students who are interested in accounting and finance.
Cool.
The goal of the talk is to flip a little bit on its head. I'm going in with the assumption, which is not a good idea, that most kids are looking at accounting and finance because of money or they're good with numbers. And so I'm going to flip it upside down and be like, those are both bad reasons to get into this career. What's something that you would tell kids who are 16, 17, 18 years old, thinking about accounting and finance, about, anything as they jump into a career, maybe something about like freedom, like you've been talking about?
I love that. My advice to anyone who's interested in finance or accounting or anything like that, whatever you're interested in, I think the earlier you can ask yourself and to not just list, but prioritize that step is very important. The things that you value, the things that you hope to gain, your expectations about, what you're going to be learning and doing and what you hope to get out of it. It's really important to name those, and you can always change. You can always change what your goals are. But what happens is, I think about all of work like exercise. You're building muscles. So if you go into law and you're trained to look for risk, that may or may not spill out into other pieces of your life, right? I'm an entrepreneur, and so I'm trained to look for opportunity. Sometimes it's maddening to my family because I think everything can work all the time. There's always a way through. There's always, right? Sometimes my husband's, it's just not going to happen today. We can't do 8 things in an hour. And I'm like, but I'm sure we could solve for this. Let's figure it out. It's like, but think about the muscles that you'll exercise along the way as you're doing that kind of work and as you're in that kind of environment day in, day out, because you will become different. You will grow different muscles and other muscles will atrophy. So you will not be the same person before and after. So write yourself, write the after version of you, a little note from the before version of you, and say, look, I'm going into this because I value this and this. I hope to get these things out of it. I hope to do this job for 2 years, and then I hope to go do whatever, because my real dream might be this. By the way, maybe your real dream is the thing itself. Great. Nailing it. Amazing. Yeah. But still, I think to be able to document yourself, to be able to clarify, these are the things I want and these are the things I don't want to compromise, check in on yourself. Don't, I said earlier, like falling asleep at the wheel, but don't just get into the cycle of working for the next paycheck that there's so much that you can do and still achieve a lot of goals that, I guess I would say don't settle, but that assumes that the things that you're describing, people might be interested in or settling in anyway. But this is the more positive. But I think what I might say is, good for you. Those are powerful tools, and you can use those tools for a very wide range of things. Yeah. So once you understand how money works, how money flows, there's a lot you can do with that. And you might hear from other people or other organizations that this is the way it has to be done. These are the goals, the universal goals or the intentions with learning this stuff. But you always get to decide. You always get to decide how you're going to use those skills and those tools. Have high standards for yourself, and there are very few rules. Keep thinking broadly and creatively about what you want to build. Because even if you don't see models for it, it doesn't mean that you're not the person to break the mold and do it for the first time.
That's really good. All right. I'm going to share that on Thursday. I'll let you know how it goes. But that's amazing. So helpful.
Oh, I'm so
Jessica,
glad. Yes, sir.
Thank you for being real. It's one of the things that I love most about you is
thanks, friend.
you're very thoughtful, and there was a ton of wisdom that isn't just some small, cute microfinance lending idea that
good for
was
you.
billions of dollars in the making. Who knew back in 2009 we'd be here today in 2025 talking to each other? This is pretty cool.
So thank you. Thank you. This is really a pleasure. What a great way to start the week.
Hey there. If this episode impacted you, would you share it with a friend right now? That would mean a lot to me. And even better, if you could leave a review of the show. Maybe mention what part of this conversation stuck with you. On the first Tuesday of each month, we're going to bring you some more stories of great leaders who have learned what it means to be truly wealthy. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to drop that on the first Thursday of each month. So keep an eye on that. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.